Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be learning a lot about muscle physiology, mostly the basics of muscles, common features of all the skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle combined into one very short video. So, first of all, understanding what a muscle is, the main property exhibited by any type of muscle fiber is excitability. This property is also portrayed by many neurons as such, but neurons and muscles are the two groups of tissues which respond to electrical stimuli. So, to understand muscles, we can stimulate it using external electric current to understand how it works and how it responds to the stimulus which we give in the form of an electric current. So the second property it has is contractibility. A muscle fiber can shorten its size, that is contraction, and extensibility, that is stretch out like a rubber band. Also, it can become short and it can extend itself. So both these properties are shown by the muscle fibers. And last property which combines both of these together is like it is elastic. So when you stretch it, it will start building up a passive tension like a rubber band. So these are the basic things which you need to know about a muscle. So the general classification of muscle is that it is split into skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So, the most important thing is skeletal muscle is voluntary and it requires a voluntary thought process in order to activate it, whereas the smooth muscles and cardiac muscles are involuntary and we don't have direct control over the action of those muscles. Further, skeletal muscles are striated, that is, they show zones of alternating dark and light bands. We will explain this concept of dark bands and light bands in the next video when we talk about a sarcomere. So, that is exclusive to skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. Smooth muscle doesn't show that. Cardiac muscle, in a way, is a mixture of it has a mixture of properties of both skeletal muscle and smooth muscle, and it would be studied more in detail when we go to circulatory and heart physiology. We will try to cover most important things about generally muscle in this series. When we talk about the heart, we will talk if we talk about the cardiac muscles, it will be more appropriate. But the special properties the cardiac muscle has is that it is striated like a skeletal muscle, but it is involuntary like a smooth muscle. Also, it has no perimysium, epimysium. These are perimysium, epimysium are like coverings around the bundles of muscles or the whole muscle belly itself. So I'll explain all of that in just a second. It contains something known as intercalated discs or gap junctions, which helps it to act as a syncytium. This word syncytium will be very frequently used when we talk about smooth muscles. We'll get to that. And finally, there's a special type of cell present in the cardiac tissue known as pacemaker cells. These cells are capable of producing their own action potential, and they usually muscle responds to different action potential, but this pacemaker cell is capable of producing its own action potential and sending it to different heart muscles, namely your SA node, your AV node, your Purkinje fibers, your bundle of his. All of these contains these types of pacemaker cells. So generally here I've drawn a skeletal muscle, but it shows most of the important general properties of muscle. So this whole thing is known as the muscle belly. It's made up of many fascicles of muscles. Each fascicle of muscle contains numerous muscle fibers. So the covering around the whole muscle belly is known as epimysium. The covering between each of these fascicles is known as perimysium, and the covering between each of the muscle fibers is known as endomysium. These can be visualized like your sleeves around your cable. If you happen to know what a braided cable is, you will understand that this perimysium, epimysium, and endomysium are sleeves around these muscles, and they are like small springs which are present in a body which are able to contract and expand. So that would be the introduction of muscles. So another classification of muscle fibers are your type 1 and type 2 fibers. Please do know that your muscles have combination of both these fibers, which are slow fibers and fast fibers. Type 1 is slow and type 2 is fast. So type 2 is further classified into type 2A and 2B. So 2A is slower than 2B. 2B is the fastest muscle. And so how we explain this is you see all the superstar athletes who are sprinters and marathoners, right? Sprinters will have a higher uh, proportion of type 2 fibers, whereas marathoners will have a higher proportion of type 1 fibers. These fibers are use different ways of biochemical biochemical pathways to obtain energy. So that's how they are classified. Type 1 fibers are also known as oxidative fibers. Slow oxidative fibers, they obtain their energy from Krebs cycle. So it takes a lot of time for it to obtain its energy, that's it's slow. Whereas type 2 fibers are generally glycolytic, that is, they are anaerobic and they don't depend on oxygen for deriving their energy. Whereas type 2A is oxidative glycolytic. It obtains its energy from both these pathways, so it's moderately fast but not very fast. Whereas type 2B is purely glycolytic and is the fastest fiber. Other important properties are that the rate of fatigue is very slow in this slow or type 1 fibers, whereas in type 2 fibers it's very fast. So with all of these in your mind, I think you will understand that type 2 and type 2 fibers are usually mainly seen a lot in your skeletal muscles, and type 1 fibers are seen more so in your smooth muscles. So that would be a general introduction to your skeletal muscle physiology, and I hope you found this video really useful. Thank you.